Shall I give you a bunch of?
Yes.
Okay. You're great.
Lights on.
You're good.
I have 5:29.
Oh, well, I don't want to rush things. It's just,
Okay, it's 5:30. I'll call the meeting of the Planning Board of Appeals to order. The first thing I want to do is appoint Matt Agron to the board as a full member for this meeting. And can we have the roll call, please?
where am I? Matt Agron.
Here.
And Paula Maselli.
Here.
Phyllis Rand.
Here?
Steve Bannister. Here. Melanie Dorn.
Here.
And we have myself, David Hediger, and Shelley Godbach.
Before we get to new business, I want to ask if there are any adjustments to the agenda,
No adjustments.
including the minutes.
Minutes, you do not have the minutes yet. Sorry, those are not completed at this time.
Okay, so we'll remove that from today's agenda. Item 3. Okay, thank you. Will be continued at the next meeting. Item 2, new business, which is the petition for the appeal submitted by Kafia Property Services LLC for a variance at 44 Birch Street. Specifically, the request is for a variance of Lewiston zoning and land use code dimensional space and bulk standards to reduce the required minimum lot size from 4,000 square feet to 2,500 square feet. First, we will hear from the petitioner. Then we will hear from any in favor of the request, and then any opposed. Then we will go back to the appellant for any last-minute comments, and then close the public comment section. First, the board needs to discuss under which sections of the code the appeal would be heard and take a vote. I would like to entertain a motion that the board well, we need to discuss which articles we're going to be listening to this under. So we're going to I would entertain a motion that the board consider Article 9, Section 3B5 of the City of Lewiston's Zoning and Land Use Code to hear this appeal. Can I have that in the form of a motion?
I make a motion that we continue with Article 9, Section 3B5 of the Zoning and Land Use Code, and that whole paragraph, Shelley.
Okay, so that was motion by Paula Maselli,
Second.
seconded by Steve Bannister. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Thank you, it's unanimous. Okay. So do we want to start with David?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll read a lot of this, but I'll try to skip some of it as well. This property is located in the downtown residential district. It's a 50 by 50 foot lot with 2,500 square feet total and 50 feet of frontage. It is non-conforming in terms of the minimum required lot size, which in the downtown residential is 4,000 square feet. The property is currently vacant but had a 3-story residential structure as recently as 2014, which has since been demolished. The district has a minimum net lot area per dwelling unit of 1,250 square feet, which minimum total lot size aside would permit this lot to build 2 dwelling units. In July 2020, a building permit was approved for this property for a 1-story 30 by 30 duplex. However, the development never occurred. The permit was allowed to expire. Since then, changes to the zoning ordinance have resulted in this lot becoming undevelopable. As per Article 9, Section 3B5 of the Zoning and Land Use Code, the Board of Appeals shall grant a variance from dimensional space and bulk standards of the Zoning and Land Use Code when strict application of an ordinance to the petitioner and petitioner's property would cause practical difficulty and when the following conditions exist. A, the need for the variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not the general condition of the neighborhood. B, the granting of the variance will not produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood, will not unreasonably detrimentally affect the use or market value of the abutting properties. C, the practical difficulty is not the result of the action taken by the petitioner or prior owner. D, no other feasible alternative to a variance is available to the petitioner. E, granting of the variance will not unreasonably adversely affect the natural environment. And F, the property is not located in whole or in part within the shoreline zone as described in Title 38, Section 435. This language was adopted from state law 30A MRSA Section 4353-4 with no change in variance criteria. The applicant, who's here this evening, has provided a narrative to address these criteria as part of their application. It's the opinion of staff that criteria B, E, and F have been met. Staff encourages the board request clarification from the applicant for the remaining criteria of A, C, and D. I won't go through all of this necessarily, but I just want to remind the board, and I guess there's some importance here, right, with the variance, and you folks have considered a variance recently where you need to be looking at each of the criteria here. And similar to what we did last time, there should be a vote taken on each one. So as referenced in this second paragraph here, as the board addresses the ordinance requirements, it should make a motion and vote on one before moving to the next, one being each one of the criteria that we just referenced above. The statement of facts in support of the motion must be part of the motion on which the board votes, though it's clear what facts the board found in support. It's not simply it is not simply to let each board member say what he or she thinks is pertinent, record those individuals in the minutes, and then ask the board member to say yes or no as to whether the application is met. After taking a separate board vote on after taking these separate board votes on the individual review criteria, the board should then take a bottom line vote to approve or deny the application or approve it with conditions. This vote must be consistent with the votes taken on the individual criteria. Unless the votes on each criteria found that each was satisfied, a motion to approve the application would have to be defeated. Again, you can put some conditions on this if you want. It should be noted in Article 9, Article 9, Section 9, specifically states that any right, including but not limited to variances secured by an action of the board, shall expire if the work or change not involved is not begun within 6 months and substantially completed within 1 year. However, the board may grant one or more extensions not to exceed a year if prior to the expiration the petitioner files a request. The thought being there is if you folks do decide to grant a variance, variances do get recorded. We have to provide the findings, it gets recorded, and it would be specific in there that work needs to begin within 6 months. So the applicant would have to, at least at that point, have applied for permits and started the process with the inspectors upstairs. Again, there's a recommended motion here for you folks to consider. And again, when you're making the motion, the board should make sure it has considered each of the variance criteria. The statements of the facts in support of the motion must be part of the motion on which the board votes, so it's clear what facts the board found in support. And again, if they want to place any limits on the term of the variance to relieve any practical difficulty, you folks can do that. I've provided you the language in here, the specific sections that would be applicable to the applicant's request. There's some guidance in here from MMA as well as far as the criteria that need to be referenced when considering granting a variance. So Mr. Kafia, is here along with his son to provide some translation services if necessary, and they can answer any questions.
Thank you. So we will hear first from the appellant, Mr. Kafia, or his son.
Ciao.
Can you state your name?
Kafia.
Okay.
Yeah, my son will speak.
Okay, thank you. So did you want to present the appeal to us specifically? What we are looking at are those standards that were just stated for granting a variance. And according to the planning board, Mr. Hedinger, the standards under Article 9, Section 3B, that you, the appellant, have met the standards for items 5B, E, and F. But there's some question about how you have determined that you met the standard for beginning with item A, then C and D. Do you have those, do you have the items?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so if you could first please state how you've met the need for a variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not to the general condition of the neighborhood?
Yes. The lot located at 44 Birch Street in Lewiston is currently considered a non-conforming lot due to being 50 by 50. Without a variance, the lot isn't able to return to a reasonable return due to the inability to erect the type of structure. The lot was in the market for sale for $15,000 with no interest. It was a cash sale. The property is currently under contract. However, the sale will not only go through unless the buyer obtains a variance. The property is unique. The buyer will be looking to build a small two-story home, which will be 35 by 35. That will meet any required setbacks and as well as other requirements by the city.
So as far as it being unique, how is it a unique circumstance of the property?
Say that one more time, sorry.
Pardon me?
Can you say that one more time?
So what makes the property unique? What is it about it that makes it very different?
Personally, I have not seen the neighborhood. He basically said that when he went to go see it, the neighborhood was it was unique. It was clean, and it felt like if he was able to build a home there, it would just add to the neighborhood's
Okay.
structure.
And, okay, so that's item A you're saying is unique because of the general appearance of the property being clean?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Next question, that the criteria for granting a variance is that the difficulty of the property is not the result of the action taken by your father or the previous owner. But the property is already outside of the required lot size. So what we're trying to determine here is that because of the what's happening now or something that happened before? Paula, did you have a question?
Yeah, I've got some questions on this. Did you originally want to purchase this land in 2020?
Do you really actually decide to move that? No, ma'am.
Do you have other questions?
Because I thought I had read somewhere in here that they got permits, correct?
The previous owner had got permits to build a
The
two.
previous owner.
Yeah, and since then, the city has changed the zoning, so,
So it's no longer grandfathered.
that's right, right.
So the
Okay.
previous owner did not need a variance.
Correct, right.
Yes.
Staff had issued a building permit for a two-family to be built there. It was issued, for whatever reason, they never moved forward with that construction there. They sold the lot. Kafia came in and was ready to apply for a permit, and we were like, oh, geez, time out. The rules have changed now. The current owner was selling it thinking that, hey, I got approval to build something here. I should be able to sell it to the next person who's interested in this lot and build something. But the rules have since changed out there. And we have advised Jow that, geez, at this point, that lot's not even grandfathered anymore. It doesn't meet the minimum standards for our code requirements.
So my next question is, being purchased, or he signed this on 29/21/23, looking for a variance, already knowing that the lot size in that area is 4,000 square feet.
I'm not sure he knew that. I think that's
And
why.
the seller hasn't told him that? They haven't shared any of that with him?
Well, unfortunately, that happens more often than you might think, as far as, people not necessarily disclosing all the challenges with the property.
That's why you get a Realtor.
And it does say it's under contract, not that it's.
David, I do have a question under the self-created hardship standard, which is on page 5 of your memo. Under Chapter 5, variances and waivers, the self-created hardship standard said that if a person seeking a variance was the owner of the lot when the ordinance requirement in question took effect, that person generally would not have a self-created hardship and could satisfy criterion number 4. So that's what I'm trying to figure out is, so Mr. Kafia is looking at purchasing this non-conforming lot, but it's not, I'm trying to figure out if it is or is not a self-created hardship.
I agree. I mean, it's a difficult test to make, and that's why we suggested, he may come to you folks. Certainly, a better argument would have been for the previous owner out there, because the city, in essence, has created that hardship upon the owner of that property. We said it was developable and no longer is. My impression in talking to the appellant here is those folks had no idea that these changes have impacted them. And that's why I suggested to them, like, geez, get an option on this as long as you can. Did you already purchase it? Is it a hardship? Yes. Is it self-created? I think you folks could argue that it probably is self-created, because if you bought the property, unfortunately, you as a property owner are supposed to know what the zoning requirements are when you buy a property. And if you go into a property, ideally, these folks would have known that that issue existed before they purchased the property. I don't know that they have any recourse necessarily. Maybe they do. And I don't know, Joe, do you actually own the property now, Joe, or do you still have an option on it? Do you have an option on it at this point, or do you actually own the property?
No, under contract.
Contract?
Yeah, so it's under.
Okay.
So, did they have a title search done? They would have found that out at that time. When you purchase something, you have a title search done to find out if it is a buildable lot or not.
Il y a de l'heure que j'ai su que, avant que je fasse le projet, c'est ça que j'étais sur le site, on m'a dit que je ne peux pas construire dans le terrain et je vais appliquer pour la variance.
So he's saying that he didn't, before he could do the closing part, he came to City Hall in order to apply for the permits, but then he found out about the variance. Sorry, the variance.
Okay, what I'm stating is that would have been done prior to coming to City Hall to get your permits.
So
And you would have found out this was not a buildable lot.
Je n'ai pas dit avant que tu viennes ici.
Non, il m'avait pas dit que on peut pas considérer terrain. C'est moi-même qui suis venu, donc c'était pour demander. Et c'est M. Diakit qui m'a dit qu'il faut appliquer pour le variant parce qu'on peut pas construire.
So, the owner of the land did not mention about the, sorry, about the, not being able to build on the land.
Okay, so who were you using to help buy this from? Who had the knowledge of buying property?
Que tu avais dit pour acheter la maison?
Acheter?
Ah, ok.
Non, j'ai vu ça, c'était dans le market. J'ai aimé le terrain,
Quel marque?
realtor.com. J'ai aimé, avant le closing, je suis passé au site pour demander si je peux construire.
He disclosed that he found the land on realtor.com, and that's where he found the land. I'm sorry if that doesn't answer your question.
It kind of does, because looking here, the brokerage disclosure has a buyer and a seller.
Right, but obviously they didn't disclose
Right.
what the size was for the building. They just wanted to get rid of it.
So we have to decide whether or not, right, we have to decide whether or not that is a self-created hardships or not. Looking at item C, the practical difficulty is not the result of action taken by the petitioner or a prior owner. And then item D was another one, was the other one that we needed to ask you about, that there was no other feasible alternative to a variance available for
For question D,
question D.
okay, the original structure was demolished in 2014, and the lot stayed vacant. Had the land been developed within the set time frame, we would not need a variance. The owner, Mr. Mohammed, applied for the construction permit on August 11, 2020, and it was approved by the city of Lewiston, but the permit had expired without him being able to build on the lot. A few times later, obviously, when David mentions the rules had changed, so then now they said that you can't have or build on a lot that's 50 by 50.
Do we know when that changed?
Not exactly, but within the last 12 to 18 months, maybe. It's been part of the zoning changes that the planning board and council have been working over the last year or so to try to clarify and get, I know exactly what it was before, and that language was confusing, and that's why we ended up changing it. Unfortunately, it's made this and a couple other lots in town that would have been conforming or legally non-conforming, meaning grandfathered, they no longer are. So people's only options now are either merge the lot with an abutting lot or attempt to get a variance from the Board of Appeals.
Okay. At this time, based on what our, I feel bad, however, it doesn't meet as a building lot, so I cannot support it. It is not.
What we have,
He would have had to, his real estate broker should have been more honest with them.
I'm not sure that the broker would have known that. I think,
Well, a title search would have had to have taken place.
but after the purchase and sale would be
No, that's usually-
executed.
That's usually done before. I mean, I would never buy property without a title search.
Well, you do that in the interim.
Exactly. So that should have already taken place prior to him coming to get his permits. So,
Quelques jours avant que
I'll just add, I don't think a title search is gonna address a zoning and land use matter. Title search is gonna determine whether or not there's any liens or any other encumbrances on the property, so you know what you're buying on that property, whether or not there's a stormwater, taxes, some previous owner has an interest in that property. Title search, from my understanding, won't necessarily say this is a developable lot or not. That's just not something they're gonna be looking at. I think
That-
in an
Yeah.
sorry, Melanie, I think in an ideal world, yeah, a realtor would ask some questions. They may or may not have. Things would have been disclosed. They may or not have. Property owner might know what's going on. There's just a lot of variables there that make buying a property a challenge.
And that's why you run to City Hall first and get all your questions answered before you sign on the dotted line.
Well, that's a moot point, because it's here now, and it's up to us to decide on each one of these criteria. But first, I have to ask if there are any other people here to speak in favor of this appeal for 44 Birch Street. Okay. Are there any people in opposition to the appeal for 44 Birch Street? Seeing none, we'll go bring it back to the appellant. Do you have anything in closing that you want to say before we discuss this?
Question, je dis, là, on a mis ça d'augmenter les taxes. Yeah, tu peux dire le rôle, quoi, ça peut aider.
You all set?
No, he was just basically saying how he feels like this would really help the city. He obviously is going to meet any requirements that you guys tell him to do. If this ends up going through, especially the city of Lewiston, it feels like it will help housing and making housing available for more people, just because the shortage out there of housing, and it feels like this will help the city.
Okay, thank you.
I'll get another question.
Of course.
Okay, certainly.
Now, you're planning on building a 2-unit up and down, or you're not gonna have room this way? Vertical, you're gonna go,
Par 30. C'est juste
It's going to be two.
okay.
Sorry.
And how many bedrooms will be in each unit, and how many people are you assuming would live in each?
chaque unité au moins des chambres.
So, both of the units would be 2 bedrooms and a living room and a bathroom.
Bon, souvent les familles, il y a beaucoup de familles qui dorment, des loyers, des familles souvent.
It's mainly going to be for families.
So kitchen, living room,
In two-
bathroom, 2 bedrooms.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll close the public comment part, but the board can ask questions of the appellant if needed. So we have to, so David, do we go through the standards first, or do we make the motion first?
I would go through the standards and look to have each board member weigh in on each of the criteria. So, the first one, the need for the variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property, Melanie, yes, no, why, that type of thing, and we go through that sequence for each of the variance criteria.
Okay.
I have a question first. Dave,
Yeah.
how does that new state regulation for housing affect this lot? The one where they can stick an extra unit?
Yeah, exactly. I get questions every day about this. LD 2003, so the state mandated that all municipalities have to make changes to their ordinances to allow more housing opportunities. Some of these things are supposed to be done by the end of the calendar year. Hopefully we'll have it done by then, but regardless, it'll be January, February. I don't think it changes anything for this property necessarily, because the way the law is written, as I understand, you still have to meet space and bulk standards. So if a lot if this was a developable lot, they might be able to put an additional dwelling unit on the property if they had appropriate lot size. Whereas if we said before, try to come up with an example, if you are in a more rural part of town where we only allow one dwelling unit on a piece of land, but it's like a 5-acre piece of land, we will have to allow that to have at least one more dwelling, maybe two on it, because the lots can accommodate it, it has enough lot area. But if you still don't have enough lot area, just because your lot is small, it's not necessarily a freebie or a gimme. What you could do potentially is an accessory dwelling unit. Accessory dwelling units, which is another change that was required by the state, which we have adopted. Space and bulk standards don't necessarily apply from a lot size perspective. So regardless of your lot size, you can put an accessory dwelling unit on your property. It's limited to 900 square feet, and you have to, the property owner has to reside in one of the dwellings on the property. So that theoretically, I suppose if a variance was granted for this property, the ability to put an accessory, and he has a 2-unit on the property. I had to think about that. If he built a single-family home on this property upon a variance being granted, he could probably do an accessory dwelling unit on it, which is essentially a 2-family, but he would have to live there in one of those units. The property owner would have to live there. It couldn't be like an investment property where they rent it out. It gets confusing, and all municipalities are trying to figure out how to interpret all this as it goes forward.
Thank you, David. I just wanted to know before we voted, because that could change his answer when that comes through.
Potentially. I don't know how much it's going to change it, because it's a small lot to begin with
Right.
out there.
50 by 50.
But I think an accessory dwelling unit could happen. If the lot's deemed to be developable, I do think accessory dwelling unit may be an option.
Thank you, David. Any more questions for David? So the first thing that we need to vote on, the first standard we need to vote on in granting a variance.
Can I ask a question first?
Yes.
How big is that? What size is the building unit?
Oh, what he's trying to build? It's gonna be
30 by 30.
30 by,
And I know.
one second.
No, 30 by 30.
It's gonna be 30 by 30.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay. So the first item is under Article 9, Section 3B5A. We need to vote individually on whether or not the need, whether yea or nay, the need for variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not to the general condition of the neighborhood. We can start on my left with Matt.
Thank you for that one. I hate seeing the dead spaces downtown. I'll be honest, I'd love to see them all redeveloped, but we changed the rules.
Would you like for me to start on the other end?
Sure, because I'm still debating this one in my head. I've been debating this one since I opened the packet up.
Yeah, okay. All right, Melanie?
Yes, so I would vote that this has met the unique circumstances.
So it's meant A.
Yes, that's
A.
what, yeah.
Yeah.
Because of the unique size of the lot, that, yeah, because of the unique size.
Okay, that's one vote yes. Steve?
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Need for the variance is for the variance is because it's non-conforming. So I'm done.
Okay. Back to Matthew.
Unfortunately, I have to agree with Steve. It's non-conforming because the city's changed its lot size.
Okay. Paula?
I have to agree, it is a no because of the $4,000 square foot lot.
Okay. And then my vote, I look at the criteria for unique circumstances, and it says, a landowner seeking a variance from a required lot size in a case where other lots in the neighborhood are all of a similar size generally cannot meet the uniqueness test. And the description that the petition has given for uniqueness also does not meet that criteria for 5A. So I would have to vote against. I would have to say, no, it does not meet that. The next one, item B, the granting of a variance will not produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood and will not unreasonably detrimentally affect the use or market value of abutting properties. We'll start with Matt.
That one I can answer. I'll be honest, I don't see any negative effects of this being built as a two-story unit.
So that's a yes?
That would be a yes.
Okay. Paula?
I also say yes, because it doesn't change anything in the street, the city of Lewiston at all. So I would vote yes on that one.
Okay. Melanie?
I also vote yes. I don't think it would change the character of the neighborhood.
Steve?
Yes. Means.
And my vote is also yes. It would not produce an undesirable change in the neighborhood. Item C, the practical difficulty is not the result of action taken by the petitioner or a prior owner. Melanie?
I believe this has been met, so yes. It wasn't due to an owner's actions, and it was discovered after the purchase and sale was signed.
Okay. Steve?
Yes.
Okay. Matthew?
I agree. It was done because the city changed its size, not anything of the ownership and lot sizes that were done.
So that's a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Paula?
I have to go no, because I just don't think there was enough research done in purchasing the property, or going to purchase the property.
Okay. And I vote yes for same reasons as Melanie. The petitioner was not aware of the lot size, and so it was after the fact. Item D, no other feasible alternative to a variance is available to the petitioner. Melanie?
I vote yes on that. I don't believe there's any other alternative.
Steve?
David, can you review that alternative you were speaking of earlier for different type of housing on there?
No other feasible alternative to a variance is available to a petitioner. The,
You're saying if he lived in the dwelling, that would be an exception? That would be an alternative?
well, he needs the variance first in order to even put the
If the
dwelling.
variance is granted?
If the variance is granted, then the question is whether or not he has the ability to put an additional dwelling unit on the property, given some pending zoning changes that occur.
So he would have a two-story building and he would need another building on that lot
He
to reside in?
potentially, again, we got to craft the language, but the ability may exist to put an accessory dwelling unit on the property,
So you have the main structure and another structure that he would reside in.
potentially, right?
Okay.
But again, that's if the variance is due to the lot size out there, so is there any other alternative available? You know, why is the variance necessary?
Sure.
It's not as though it's not like it's a setback question. Why does he have to be 5 feet? Could he just make the building smaller, and that way he could be 10 feet from the property line, something like that?
So, is that met or is that not met? Can you go on?
Yes, sure. Matthew?
Unfortunately, because of the zoning change, it's not met. If the zoning change hadn't been done, it could be done.
So is that a no?
That'd be a no.
Okay. Paula?
I have to agree with Matt because it is not meeting what the city has set for the lot size.
Steve?
It's a no for me.
Okay. For me, it's, there is no feasible alternative, so that's a yes for me. That was everyone. I got you, Melanie, right? Okay. Item E, the granting of a variance will not unreasonably adversely affect the natural environment. Matthew?
There's no problem. Putting a house on that lot will not change downtown.
Okay, so that's a yes.
Yes.
Paula?
We're on D, you said?
E.
E, the granting of a variance will not unreasonably affect the natural environment. You,
It's a yes. It does not affect anything
okay,
from downtown or environmental.
Melanie?
Yes, I don't believe that'll affect the environment.
Steve?
It's a yes for me.
And that's a yes for me. It will not affect adversely affect the natural environment. Item F, if the property is not located in whole or in part within shoreland areas as described in Title 38, Section 435.
If Birch Street is in the title page, we have serious problems.
So we'll start with Matthew.
It does not apply.
So that's a yes, okay? Paula?
I agree, it doesn't apply.
Okay. Melanie?
Agreed, doesn't apply.
Steve?
Yes, does not apply.
And I agree as well, it does not apply. Now, David, my understanding is now we have to, if there are any no's that, to the criteria, then the variance cannot be granted. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's kind of a lousy situation because people have voted for different ways and whatnot. But from a legal perspective, that is the expectation with a final motion as to whether or not a variance should be granted. So it's a clarifying vote as MMA suggests. What's their verbiage there to a bottom line vote to approve or deny it with any conditions, and that the vote's supposed to be consistent with the votes taken on the individual review. So because you haven't met all of the criteria, it would suggest that the variance shouldn't be granted.
So because the board has votes stating that the variance, that several of the items listed to grant a variance have not been met, then we're going to have to make a vote on that. And so I'm going to entertain a motion pursuant to Appendix A, Article 8, Section 4D, and Article 9, Section 3B, 5A through F of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Lewiston, the variance be granted to Joe Kafia and Kafia Property Services LLC for the minimum required lot size to be reduced from 4,000 square feet to 2,500 square feet in order to have a developable lot. The minimum required lot size for development in the DR district of 4,000 square feet as per Article 11, Section 23, to be reduced to 2,500 square feet. So what I'm doing is asking for somebody to,
Second.
well, if you could move.
Make the motion.
And is there a second? Seconded by Paula. Any further discussion?
So are we approving the variance?
We're either going to vote it up or vote it
Well,
down.
no, I'm just trying to get what we are voting on.
We're voting on, do we accept this variance? or
Okay,
not?
that's what I was trying to make clarification.
Motions are always made in the affirmative, so the
Right.
motion is to grant the variance. at this
Okay,
point.
I just had to get that through my head
Yeah.
tonight. It's been a long day.
Doesn't hurt to ask. Okay, so we have a motion that has been made by Steve, seconded by Paula. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Do a roll call.
Oh.
Or up and down.
Yeah, we could do a roll call.
Either way.
We can do the roll call.
So for the variance to be granted, Matt Agron,
Unfortunately, no.
Paul Maselli,
No.
Phyllis Rand,
Regrettably, no.
Steve Bannister,
No for me.
and Melanie Dorn.
Unfortunately, no.
So the vote is 0-5, the variance is not granted.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good. Thank you.
Okay? Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Of course, have a good night.
Joe, I gotta do another meeting, but give me a call this week. You and I should talk, okay? Okay.
Good night.
Okay, the next new business is a petition for appeal submitted by Robert Lynch for a variance at 83 No Name Pond Road. Specifically, the request is for a variance of Lewiston's zoning and land use code dimensional space and bulk standards to, 1, reduce the required minimum lot size from 60,000 square feet to 16,000 square feet. 2, increase the allowable impervious area from 10% to 12.3%. 3, reduce the required minimum vegetative buffer from a perennial stream from 50 feet to 15 feet. As in the previous appeal, the board will discuss under which sections of the code the appeal will be heard and take a vote. So, let me go back. Just a second. So I'm entertaining a motion for the board to consider this appeal as per Article 9, Section 3B5 of the Lewiston Zoning and Land Use Code.
So moved.
And I'll second, okay, let Matt second.
So that was a motion by Steve and seconded by Matt. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hands. Okay, motion carried unanimously. So we'll start with David.
Okay, Robert Lynch has submitted a petition for appeal for a variance at 83 No Name Pond. Specifically, the request is for the board to grant a variance from the following dimensional space and bulk standards. 1, to develop a lot smaller than 60,000 square feet requirement of the rural ag district. 2, to construct a dwelling within 50 feet of a stream buffer. And 3, to develop a lot with more than 10% impervious area. This property is in the rural ag zone, consisting of 16,340 square feet. It's non-conforming in terms of minimum lot size required, which in the RA is 60,000 square feet. The property is also located within the No Name Pond Conservation Overlay District. A single-family dwelling occupied the lot and was demolished in 2014 by the previous owner. The property is currently vacant. I won't go through the variance criteria as they are exactly the same as what you folks just considered with the previous appeal. The applicant has presented a narrative with their application that makes an effort to incorporate reference to specific criteria. The narrative is contained within pages 3 to 5 of their application. However, it's come to staff's attention that there are a number of discrepancies in the references made by the applicant to other variance criteria found in Article 9, Section 3 that are not applicable to this request. When reviewing the application, the board should make sure that the criteria of Article 9, Section 3B5 referenced above are each being addressed. You'll note then Mr. Lynch has since provided some additional criteria. So with the additional correspondence you folks received tonight, and I'll let Mr. Lynch get into the details of it, but this document here is an amended reference to the applicable criteria, and again, Bob can get into that with you as well. Again, we're doing the same exact thing that we just did with the last appeal. You folks should be making a motion on each of the criteria. This one's a few extra steps because technically he's asking for 3 variances at this point with respect to lot size, the buffer, and the impervious surface ratio. So you folks should be going through the exercise of each of those criteria for each of the variances being requested. With respect to the additional correspondence, and I'll note just so it's part of the record here, you do have an email from Mr. Dearborn, who lives in the area, who's expressed some concerns with the request being made. You have an email from Ms. Cusson, who also has some concerns with respect to the request. You have an email from a Mr. Bradstreet that says he is in support of Mr. Lynch's request. Again, you have an updated response to the variance criteria. And then Mr. Lynch has also provided potentially an alternative option, this site plan that you folks have. Again, I can let Mr. Lynch speak to that at an appropriate time, but those are the additional correspondence that you have with respect to this item tonight. So again, you'll be making 3 separate you'll be considering each of those criteria for each of the 3 variances, and you'll be making a blanket motion for each one of those criteria too at the appropriate time.
Okay, let me just repeat that back. So the 3 items that are being requested for variance, we have to apply the standards to each one of those?
Correct, A through F for each one of those.
Okay. And I just have a question now. The correspondence, one of them says Bob Lynch at the top. What?
Yep, that's Robert Lynch there, yeah.
Oh, okay, so it
It's concerning.
came to you and is from Mr. Bradstreet.
Yeah, exactly. He wrote it in regards to
This case.
Mr. Lynch,
Okay.
right? Yeah, yeah, that is a little confusing looking there.
All right, thank you. So those will be entered into the record?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
all right. So, so we have before us Mr. Lynch, and please proceed.
Okay. You want me to do A through E for each one, and then go on to the next one?
Okay,
Or you want me to do, okay, I'll do one. First one would be for the reduction of the square footage. It's the neighborhood is RA, residential agriculture, requires 60,000 square feet. This is our subdivision, most of our subdivision that town did sewer plan. My house is here, this property here is 16,500 square feet. This is about 6,000, this one's about 10,000. The lots were, subdivision was done in 1954. mostly summer camps it was supposed to be. There are more houses out here, some of them have been going from burning down. Mine was, this one here is removed by the bank had it removed because they foreclosed on it and didn't want to go for a variance, so they just abandoned the property, and I ended up with it. But like I say, this is 16,000 square feet. I have a stream that run, okay, so that's all the land that I can have is 16,000 square feet. The existing, the original house was here, with a garage, and I would like to, well, the area is the area, I guess. I did not go through A through E.
If you want, I can read the, each one of those and ask you.
Yeah, okay. I have
Okay,
it.
so first we're talking about the lot.
Yeah.
To develop a lot smaller than the 60,000 square feet requirement of the rural agricultural district. So, looking at the variance criteria, can you please tell us, just looking at this, the square footage request, the need for a variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not to the general condition of the neighborhood?
Okay, there's a stream that runs through my property, seasonal stream, runs through the property and comes down out here. And it also is, that's all the land that was, when the lots were developed, 50 foot by 100 foot was an approvable site. But since the zoning was changed on that area, it's now 60,000 square feet, unless you get a cluster housing or something.
So what makes what makes it unique? What makes the property unique? I know that the stream runs through there. Does the stream run through other properties as well?
It runs through my property also.
But does it run through other people's property?
No, it's a property boundary line. The stream is further down, the next two houses before it hits the pond would be, comes through here, comes out into here, and it hits the pond out here. So just one more house that it goes by.
So what I'm trying to understand is are you saying that the property is unique because of the stream, or is the property unique, the square footage unique because of some other reason?
I would say then the square footage is, I guess it just can't, there's no other land available to add to it to make it 60,000 square feet.
All right.
That's what it is. Sorry.
Okay. The second, item B, the granting of a variance will not produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood and will not unreasonably detrimentally affect the use or market value of abutting properties.
The proposed house would be very similar to what else is out in the neighborhood for houses. And the original house was this pink here versus, well, up here, close to the street.
Okay. Next, the practical difficulty is not the result of action taken by you or a prior owner.
The house that was there was demolished. I didn't have access to the property. The deed was not delivered to me before a year after it had been demolished. So I had no control over that. And then we looked at there was questions about how distance to the pond, where the property, whether it was in the pond zone or not. And that took a while to straighten out, and then COVID helped a lot on slowing down what I did.
You owned the property when that house was demolished?
I owned the property where this house was demolished. Did I own it
At that time?
at that time? Hard to say. The lawyers down in Portland filed the deed after they had it demolished, and I got the deed 6 months later. So I didn't know about that. They'd given me the property, or sold me the property for 6 months after they'd already demolished the house. And it was too late for me to apply for a grandfathering. So we spent some time making sure that the lot was out of the buffer zone, the no-name pond buffer. Otherwise, they'd have to join the two lots together.
Let's see. Go
So the
ahead.
two lots aren't joined together? You have, give me your overall
There's
property.
three lots here,
line.
1, 2, 3. There's 3 lots there, and I own these 3 lots down here.
Okay.
I acquired one a couple of years ago and added it to mine. But I didn't add it to this one, I added it to, I didn't own. I've had this for 30 years. I've only had this, well, I guess it's 1915, or 2015 that they gave me a deed for it, or I acquired a deed for it.
Was the land willed to you or something?
It's a HUD mortgage. When HUD fails a mortgage, the feds back them up and pay them the mortgage money. So the property is sold back to the federal government. Federal government doesn't own land. So they give it to an abutter. I am the only abutter to it, so I was the only person who qualified for it. And they eventually got me a deed for it. But it wasn't for, my chances of grandfathering it were gone. I didn't realize it, that the demolishing countdown for grandfathering starts on the day they take the mortgage, they take the loan out, take the permit out to demolish the house, not when they actually do demolish the house. So by the time I got the deed in the middle of the winter, the house had been,
Long gone.
well, the paperwork had been long gone. They demolished it afterwards, but that's,
Did you have any question?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I'm jumping ahead. Now, the house you plan on building there, are you gonna have septic and well?
I'm on town sewage. The
Town
sewer,
sewage?
sewer treatment plant is in my front yard, and we pump it up the hill into Water's Edge subdivision. There's 3 acres up there, that is our septic system. We did that to neutralize the impact of Water's Edge on the pond, because our 10 septic systems would negate the phosphorus loading from the subdivision up there. So that's what they did to get that subdivision through. But it left us with a viable working septic system. I donated the corner of my lot for a lift station and power generator and electrical circuitry.
Now, are you on a well?
Yes, we're all on wells. Town water is a little distance away.
The next criteria is there's no other feasible alternative other than a variance that's available to you.
There is none. I have to do, the only thing I can do with it is, there's 17,000 or 16,500 square feet. I can't produce any more land for it. I can't take it away from mine. because I'm not allowed to subdivide my lot at this point because it's in the buffer zone for the pond.
Okay.
That's my problem.
The last criterion is, I think, no, wait a minute. No, there's one more. The granting of a variance will not unreasonably adversely affect the natural environment.
Right now, most of the lawn is a lawn out here. There's a driveway that comes in. You have a picture of it from across the street looking down into the garage. And there's a row of spruce trees here, and then it goes into a pine and wetlands down through here. There's a concrete slab down here, which was a garage. I will remove that 2,400 square feet of concrete slab that is inside the 50-foot buffer to help compensate for my other work I'm doing on the property, building the house, or working on the garage.
Okay. And item F, the property is not located in whole or in part within shoreland areas as described in Title 38, Section 435. So David, we're looking at, my question is, in the public comments, am I also public commenting each items 1 through 2 and 3 separately?
Actually, that's probably not a bad idea, Phil. It's just if you want to open the discussion with respect to each one of the variances, that's probably not a bad idea.
Okay.
If I can, could I add one other thing?
Sure.
Maybe to a question that Steve was asking, and what Bob was clarifying. If in Lewiston, if you have a non-conforming structure on a non-conforming lot, which this was prior to 2014, you have a year to replace that structure. So given that it was bank-owned, they probably had no interest in putting a house there because it was condemned and they knocked it down. But if they had sold that property to Bob or somebody else and a permit had been pulled within a year, they could have replaced it. And then actually the way the ordinance is written is then after a year, from 1 to 12 months, you can replace a non-conforming structure as a matter of right. From 13 to 24 months, you can replace it if the Board of Appeals grants approval. So after 24 months, you're out of luck. You can't reestablish that non-conforming structure unless you get a variance or go through some process here. So for better or for worse, given recordings and processes involving the bank, as I understand it, the bank may have given it to him, but he wasn't made aware of it in a timely manner. And whether they were going to do a house in that time or not, I don't know. But under different circumstances, that would have been an out here, an ability to develop the lot or redevelop the lot as a matter of right. The other point too, and Bob can correct me, but he lives next door with his wife, but I believe your house is under a different ownership, right? Your house is you and your wife.
Yes, my wife.
So
The
the
lot
property,
out here is only in my name.
correct. So
Yeah,
this lot is technically under separate ownership from where he lives that's owned by him and his wife. If lots had been both under the same ownership, this wouldn't even be having a conversation right now because his other lot is in the shoreland zone and it would have had to been combined to create a larger lot out there. So just wanted to give some context as to how we ended up with a lot when people built. Same thing with the last appeal. If the previous owner, that property had a 3-unit on it back in 2014, it was demolished because it was condemned. Somebody could have come in within a year and put a 3-unit right back on that property. So, but they didn't. So that's how these non-conformances work.
I have one question. What kind of structure are you planning on putting in this area?
It would be a 24 by 28 foot wooden structure, stick-built, to go along with the neighborhood. There's pictures of the existing, the house that was there in your things. It's the entrance to our neighborhood. I want it to look nice. I mean, I've worked hard to
So it's basically a single family?
Single family, yes, only a single family.
Is it a pad, a foundation? What's the limitations on that for that area?
Well, there is an existing foundation where the garage was. The rest of the house up here was a fieldstone foundation, which didn't hold up. So they demolished that, and then they also demolished the garage. I have to be 25 feet back from the street. I have to be 10 feet from the other property lines. So I can use the center out here. I was going to try to put it together so that the garage and the house were connected before. I'd like to do it the same way so that you lose a smaller imprint on the ground and less, even though maybe square footage of building may be the same. What you do around it makes a difference. And if the two buildings are up against each other, there's only 3 sides being created new and not 4 sides.
I have a question,
Yes.
and it might be kind of for both of you. So if your other property were merged with this parcel, would that be able to meet the accessory dwelling unit requirements?
Still be an undersized lot.
It's still less than 60,000, but, and actually, Bob and I talked briefly about this afternoon, and I had to do a little more research. I think maybe, I don't think it's a no, I think it's
Yeah.
a maybe, as far as, I mean, you might be able to do an accessory dwelling unit on the property. Again, there's requirements specific in the code about somebody has to live in one of those structures that owns the property.
And you would live,
Oh, yeah, we retired there.
And
Not getting me out of there.
the question would be, where would that accessory dwelling go on the property? Could it be located on the lot and meet setback requirements without the need for a variance? So if out of the 3 criteria, the 3 variances being requested, if lot size is no longer a question, if you can do an accessory dwelling unit as a matter of right, then would he still need a variance for impervious area, and would he need a variance for a reduction in the buffer? That's, I don't know that question can be answered tonight because they're not necessarily considering it as an accessory dwelling unit, but if they were, maybe they could do that without a variance. So that, depending on where this goes tonight, that might be an option. I told Bob that was something that we could look into depending on how this goes this evening. But I can't tell you for
Yeah.
sure.
okay, thanks.
Any more questions from the board before we open it up to public comment? Okay, so the way this works is that first we will ask for people who are in favor to speak. And when you speak, please identify yourselves by name and address so the secretary can properly record them in the minutes. So at this time, I will ask for those in favor to, now's your chance.
I have a letter from one of my neighbors
Yes.
who lives in this house here. In favor of it, I can give the letter to,
We do have a copy of the letter.
oh, okay.
This is a separate, this is another one.
Who's that from?
This is from Stephen Tuck.
Oh, that's a new one.
Yep.
Yeah, we don't have that one. We'd like to submit that.
Okay,
And you have the one from Richard Bradstreet?
Yeah.
yes.
You have the one from my wife?
I think that's a conflict of interest.
Oh, okay, all right. I mean, I'll pass this to you guys and I can keep it up to our record.
Sorry, different boards I'm used to.
And while we're reading it, I just want to reiterate that right now we are discussing the first variance request, and that is to develop a lot smaller than the 60,000 square foot requirement of the rural agricultural district. I don't wanna- okay. So this letter is from Stephen Waldo Trott and Quinn Merriam, Center Avenue in Lewiston, so that will be entered into the record. And that's what we're passing around right now.
We have a central Ave and a central street.
Yes. We
It's
get the
always
mail.
confusing if you're, dispatch.
Does it count for wives to approve? I probably don't know. But if I do,
I
I'll
think
approve.
you can.
Well, just wait for, okay, so we have reviewed the letter. So now, I will ask anyone in opposition or having a question about the appeal has the opportunity to speak at the podium. Please remember to identify yourself by name and address. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Not sure if we're opposing it. I guess we just have some questions. I'm Mike Raincourt up at 41 Waters Edge Drive. I'm the vice president of the Waters Edge Association up on the hill. And I guess we have a few questions, like the septic system we were talking about. So he's on the opposite side of the brook, right, that the septic system, so how do you get across the brook to get to the, wasn't able to see your poster. Is it already stubbed? I mean, David, you probably would know the answer to this. How is he gonna get to that tank?
The tank was installed on the property,
The septic tank's on the property?
was on the property.
But you have to get from there across the brook, correct?
It went underneath the brook, 8 feet down.
So it's already stubbed?
It's already stuck.
That's our
Okay.
understanding as well.
Okay, and is the septic system up behind our association? Is it designed for another home?
Yeah, so, just for the benefit of what, because this is really addressed to you folks. As Bob was referring to, that whole development down there on the pond, they used to all have septic systems that were all in different conditions. And back in the late 90s, they put a community septic system on a bunch of land that's associated with the Waters Edge subdivision that Mr. Rancourt's talking about. The city maintains and manages all that. The pump station is on Bob's property. And that field is designed to accommodate so many dwelling units. And to answer your question, yeah, it actually is designed for that unit because that house was already there previously. So we checked with water and sewer on that because that was a concern of staff's too, that are we approving something that we can't even have a hookup to? So yes, they have the ability to hook up to the community septic system.
Can I ask a question in here? Is it, or does he still have the floor?
That's,
Well,
Only
Well,
because,
yeah, go ahead.
well, I'm concerned too about the septic, because what if those pipes corrode or something happens, all of that's gonna go right into the pond?
it's no different than the pipe corroding in front of your house now if you're on city sewer. It's a public utility out there that's maintained by the water and sewer department. So it's an ongoing maintenance issue.
But there's no pond in front of my house. That pond is used for a lot of different things.
It's a concern, but again, it's a utility, again, it's maintained by the city. I mean, it would be my opinion, it's not a reason not to allow somebody to hook up to it, given that it's already approved for an additional hookup to it. That concern was really, that type of concern, Paula, probably should have been voiced 20-some odd years ago when they were considering, does it make sense to put a giant leach field in the area of the pond out there? And the answer at that time was, yes, it does, because it makes sense to get this leach field further away from the pond than have a bunch of small lots with all these grandfathered systems on them right next to the pond. Let's put that leach field, you know, a quarter mile up the street so it has less of an impact. The pond has benefited tremendously just from doing that out there.
Yeah, that's the concern that we had, is the pond it's got issues, right? It's decreased in quality. We were just wondering about the environmental impact. I mean, if they're gonna take a slab out, put another structure in there, was that all gonna be mitigated with environmental protection, you know, the fences and, because you are right up against that brook, right? And that feeds the pond. So that was just our concern, was worried about the pond. I'm also was part of the No Name Pond Association for a few years. So anyways, we just had some concerns, some questions about the environmental impact of it. And I guess that was it. We're just concerned about the pond. Now, if this variance is approved, they can only put a single-family home, is that correct?
So the variance is for the three items, right? The impervious area, the buffer from that stream, and the lot size up there. And it would be for a single-family dwelling. If you were here for the first discussion where they were asking questions about that LD 2003, I don't think another dwelling could go on this property. Maybe an accessory dwelling unit. That's something we would have to look into.
On a 16,000 square foot lot, you could have a,
Potentially,
because
yeah.
I know when I built up in Water's Edge, we had very strict standards, right? We can only have a small building envelope. The way that our septics, was all mitigated with, you know, with fences. It was quite a process to go through to build up in that association. So just, you know, want to make sure that, you know, same standards are followed, I guess.
Yeah, again, I guess for the benefit of everybody, the subdivision that he lives in was heavily scrutinized because of the pond conditions out there. They have to meet certain phosphorus standards. They had building envelopes that they're supposed to limit development into. I don't even think you guys are supposed to be using lawn fertilizer up there, you know,
Right.
Things of that nature up there. Those standards apply to that subdivision only. If Bob wants to put fertilizer on his lawn, it might not be the best practice, but he could. There's nothing that keeps that from happening out there. The whole question of whether or not another dwelling unit could go on there, I don't want to misspeak or give false hope, but that bill allows for accessory dwelling units. Whether or not there's enough land on this property to accommodate that, I'm not sure. A subdivision like theirs, from a city perspective, from a state perspective, they could put an accessory dwelling unit on it too, unless they had specific covenants and restrictions, which they very well may have, that say, hey, no more dwelling units. But for the majority of lots in town, or probably in the state for that matter, unless you have a deed restriction on your property, this new law is going to provide more housing opportunities out there. The only other thing I'd add, and it's not necessarily any consolation other than there are rules that need to be followed, and Bob could probably reference this as well. That stream that is on the property, the city has a 50-foot buffer requirement. DEP has a 75-foot requirement, but DEP will waive that down to 25 feet. And at one point, Bob did have, I believe you had a permit for 25 feet. And if he could get that again, good for him. But the point being is that DEP will allow you to get as close as 25 feet, assuming you take all the appropriate erosion control measures, which is what Mr. Raincourt's talking about, and it's the city's concern too. So that's when you start seeing silt fencing, hay bales, erosion control mix, things like that. I would fully expect all the neighbors would be calling our office if it's a mess out there, because nobody wants to see the pond out there get deteriorated.
Because we had to have a DEP and an EPA and studies, right, for that whole project up there. I think we weren't allowed to go 200 feet from that brook that cuts up through there.
It could be, yeah. I mean, it's
So,
I don't know, but I can tell you, and I don't know if Bob, if you included it or not, but he did have a permit at one point to be within 25 feet. He may not get that permit. You folks could grant a variance and say, hey, great, we're okay with him getting closer. He still needs to get a permit from DEP, and if for some reason there's a change of heart at DEP that says, no, you're not gonna get 25 feet, but we'll give you 40 feet or something like that, great, then that's what he has to live with from DEP's perspective.
I guess that was my last question, was, is there any kind of a study gonna be done? Is he required to do any kind of a DEP, or is it permits? Is that what he needs from the DEP, because he's near that brook? Yeah.
So, yes.
Just,
I would assume so.
He would need a,
I would be very concerned. I mean, that pond is really nice to the city. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember when it was the chalet, Montagnal up there.
Yeah.
That's how old I am.
now, is this gonna be rental property, or is this gonna be something you're gonna live in?
This is going to be, hopefully, for my daughter,
Okay,
who, one daughter works in town already, and the other one is looking to become a professor in this area.
okay.
Give her for housing, because I'm not moving out of my house.
Okay, thank you.
She hasn't kicked you out yet, huh?
So just to clarify on the septic, is the septic in that, that's there, you said it's there already, was it installed when all the other septics were done? And is it
Well, it was one of the
connected?
last ones done.
Okay.
The town actually paid for it
They did.
and had it installed.
Okay,
Connection run underneath the stream.
so it's connected now, or will it have to be connected?
Well,
You know?
the person who was doing the demolition, the first person who was doing the demolition, brought his piece of equipment in around the back and ran over the septic tank and fell into it. They hired somebody else after that, the town did. Or, I don't know if it was a town, whoever was paying, the bank, I guess, was paying for it. And they demolished it. And I don't know, I was not here during the time they did it. So I don't know what,
I know the city did pay to have that all put
yeah,
in.
yeah, for good ones, yeah.
I've lived in the town long enough to know that.
I think my understanding is that the house that was there was connected to this system already
Okay.
out there.
So is there anyone else who is speaking in opposition to the first variance request to develop a lot smaller than the 60,000 square foot requirement? Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Mr. Lynch, before the board discusses this?
Are you going to vote first on the area?
Yes.
Doing one at a time.
Okay.
Yeah, we're
I'll
doing
let
them one
you
at a time.
Do your first one.
Okay, so we'll bring it back to, we'll close the public comment portion, and we'll bring it back to the board for discussion. I do want to mention, we're talking about permit. We do have a copy of the Natural Resources Protection Act permit by rule from the Department of Environmental Protection. Is dated August 26th, 2019, and looks like this. I know we have a lot of papers,
A
but
lot of papers tonight.
Which one was that?
it is attached to the petition for appeal.
Ah, okay. It was underneath my map.
So we do have that. And based on this, the permit is not valid until approved by the department or 14 days after receipt by the department, whichever is less. And it looks like it was received by the department. So by default, and by what this says, the permit was approved to construct a single-family home using the existing foundation. And again, this is a Natural Resources Protection Act permit by rule from the Department of Environmental Protection
As of 2019.
in 2019, yes.
I'll just add, Phyllis, that was what I was referencing. I believe, and I'm not sure, but I believe DEP provides 2 years to start the activity, and then if it hasn't, I believe the permit expires. So Bob would have to apply for this permit over again. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, but your intent in showing this is that at the time DEP didn't have a problem with
No,
allowing
DEP didn't have a problem. They were working with us on this, on our neighborhood to conservation stuff, drainage and flow rates and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, you have to come to the podium. Please state your name. Oh, could have just gone to the podium.
Oh,
Come up
that's
here.
right. We did contact, I believe, tell me if I'm wrong, he contacted the DEP about getting the permit renewed, and they said there shouldn't be any problem, but because of the fee, we figured we'd wait until we got the variance and then go for the DEP approval, so it has been, we have looked into it and talked with them. The other thing was, at the end of the 2 years, we tried to renew the permit, and it was during COVID, or we tried to renew during COVID, I don't know where it fell in there. And there was nobody, I mean, there was like 3 years you couldn't even, there was no one to talk to. So that was one of the reasons it wasn't renewed. But, and then when we did just speak to them recently, they said, I mean, they can't guarantee it, but the girl said, normally if you've got one permit, they'll renew it. So, but we wanted to do this first, and then, you know, it's another expense. There's no point doing it unless we have the variance. So, that's
Okay.
just all I wanted to say.
Okay. Because, David, I would have thought that we would want to see that the DEP green lighted this before we discussed whether or not we were going to approve it, because this is a,
Put a condition on it.
this is a NRPA permit.
Yeah, not necessarily. That question comes up often with the planning board, because projects will be subject to a DEP permit. And basically, both agencies would be holding each other up if it was contingent upon one with the other. So typically with the planning board, it would be contingent upon DEP granting approval. So again, if folks granted a variance, reducing that, that's all well and good. Bob still has to work with DEP, and if DEP doesn't give them approval, then, you know, he's stuck with 75 feet or whatever it is that DEP is willing to provide.
Okay?
I have a question.
Yes.
So, when did the period of time end for the applying for non-conforming use? Either one of,
12 months.
from when though? Like, was this,
The day they started just about
and when was it demolished? I'm just curious if the,
2014.
2014.
oh, okay. I just wasn't sure when the natural resources permit
That
fit
was-
into that.
That was later,
That was
right?
later.
We didn't realize that we had to have it done within a year.
I see. Okay.
We found out too late.
The DEP grants their variance, their approval is granted for 2 years. And then you can renew it for another year. And after that, you have to reapply. And it was the recommendation from the person who signed that, who's no longer there, that there would be not a problem they saw no problem for, basically, as far as they were concerned, it was a rebuild, not a new construction. Because that foundation that's up there is regular concrete foundation.
Okay. Okay, so the board needs to vote on the first variance request, which is to develop a lot smaller than the 60,000 square foot requirement of the rural agricultural district. Our votes will be based on whether or not the variance request meets the variance criteria, in Article 9, Section 3B5 of the Lewiston Zoning and Land Use Code. The first item, item A, under that section, is that the need for a variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not to the general condition of the neighborhood. So what we would do is you either vote yes or no and say why you voted that way. We'll start with Melanie.
Can we go that way this time?
I'm trying to get Matt a break, but
Must be new people I'm in, so walking.
Okay.
And are we doing it by size,
we are,
dwelling,
yeah, we are just doing the
size?
the square footage that we were,
That's what I thought, but I wanted to make sure.
okay, so that's a 60,000 square, less than the 60,000 square foot requirement. Do we feel that the need for variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not to the general condition of the neighborhood? Melanie?
So I would say this has not been met, so no, because it sounds like it was condition of the neighborhood, the sizes of the lots.
Okay. Steve?
That's a no for me.
So you don't, okay. Matt?
Okay, I'm actually gonna go with a yes, because it is the way the lots were laid out in 1947. There's no more land available here.
Okay.
In order to make that, you'd have to what, take your entire property?
In a public road,
I was gonna say, and the roads.
whole neighborhood, 2 acres.
Paula?
I would have to say no, because originally back in 47, these were camps where most people were not living there year-round for all the usage on a septic well, so I have to go with a no.
I do have a question for David regarding the rural agricultural district, the 60,000 square feet. That didn't have anything to do with any waterways. That was just a standard requirement? That is just a standard requirement?
Yes, all lots in the rural ag zone are 60,000 regardless of proximity to water bodies or anything like that. If you have an agricultural use, it goes up to, I think, 180,000 square feet. But if it's your traditional single-family home, it's a 60,000 square foot lot that's required.
I'm in a quandary about this because I'm sort of split both ways because I consider the unique circumstance of the property being the stream that's going through it. However, we're looking at developing a smaller property on it. I'm going to say yes to this. Next item, the granting of a variance will not produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood and will not unreasonably detrimentally affect the use or market value of abutting properties. Matthew?
There was a house here, it disappeared. You're putting it back a house there. I'm gonna go with yes.
Okay. Paula?
I'm gonna go yes, because it won't change the area. I mean, there was something there, whatever you put may be nicer, I'm assuming. So my answer is yes on that.
Okay. Melanie?
Yes, I don't think it would change the character of the neighborhood. It's all houses.
Steve?
It's a yes for me.
And it's a yes for me as well. Item C, the practical difficulty is not the result of action taken by the petitioner or a prior owner. Melanie, would you like to?
This is a very hard one.
Would you like me to come back?
What?
Would you like me to come back?
Yes,
to you?
please.
Steve?
Yes for me.
Okay. Let's see, this is why. Matthew?
Okay, before I answer this, is a yes that it is?
The yes is that it meets the this criteria.
Does it meet or does it not meet? Yes,
That's what I was
yes, it
getting
meets, no, it
clarification.
doesn't meet.
Unfortunately, this was caused by the bank destroying the house, so,
So you're,
So it meets, right?
so it meets the criteria.
so
It's a yes.
yes, okay, that's what I was getting, I was trying to figure out. It's been a long day.
I know. Paula?
I'm going with the yes because of what had happened previous.
Okay. And I also go with the yes for the same reason. Okay. D, no,
We need Melanie.
oh, I'm sorry, Melanie.
Mel's still thinking.
She thought she could get away with it.
I know.
You, she would've.
I will go with yes. I don't believe this is self-created.
Okay, thank you. Item D, no other feasible alternative to a variance is available to the petitioner. Matthew?
I have to say, there is no other alternative than a variance if we're gonna do anything with this property. Otherwise, it stays empty.
So that's a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Paula?
I'm really concerned about the pond. I know we need housing. But that lot size is really small for what agricultural, rural agricultural allows, so my answer is no.
Okay. I'm going to say yes. I don't think there is an alternative available. The last one is E, and again, we're talking about the square footage
Are you gonna
required.
get this other stuff?
I'm sorry,
I'm glad I'm not.
Matt
the
says
only
he had a long day.
one- I'm glad I'm not the only one who's tired.
I'm taking notes.
I'm sorry, I appreciate that.
All right, you want to go first?
Oh, sure.
I'm sorry.
I am going no on D because I think there's other alternatives you could look into, like merging the two lots or possibly LD 2003.
Yeah, but
It's not in effect.
it's not in effect.
Because it's two different owners.
If I join
Right,
together,
but you
I
could,
can't separate it. And if they LD whatever does not permit me, I still have to go for the area. I don't have 60,000 square feet. It's the area that's killing me. Excuse me.
these are my comments.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just,
Steve?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't meet the criteria.
Okay. E, the granting of a variance will not unreasonably adversely affect the natural environment. Melanie?
It sounds like there needs to be DEP approval anyway, so I think this has been met. It won't adversely affect, since it'll go through DEP approval.
Steve?
No, it doesn't meet unless you have the criteria, unless you have the DEP. variance, you're not going to, it would not go. So, no, it doesn't meet.
Matthew?
I'm kind of with Steve, without the DEP, it doesn't meet. They gave a tentative one, 3 years ago? But without that, no.
Paula?
It's a no, because of DEP.
Just for me, voting on this specifically for the square footage, I'm going to say yes. David, I have a question.
Yes.
If any one of the variances is voted down, does that mean that the other two are null and void? I mean, is this,
That's a good point, because if you can't develop the lot due to the 60,000 square foot requirement, then there wouldn't necessarily be a need to request a variance for the buffer or a variance for the impervious area.
so would that be a yes?
Yes, that would be a yes. If this vote is gonna result in a variance not being granted for the lot size, you may still wanna go through those criteria, but, it's somewhat moot because the lot wouldn't be developable at that point. As I'm thinking, as I'm talking here, part of me says you probably should go through the criteria just to provide a findings with respect to them, even though it's your first variance, depending on how that vote goes, is gonna kinda make it determined here, but I think it's still worth making a finding with respect to those other requests, since that he did make those requests.
Okay.
I have a question. So, the other variances that were being requested, one specifically does address the brook, right? Is that,
Yeah.
Yes.
so, is it possible that we can go through the other two criteria, A through F or whatever it is, and vote on those, and then come back and do an overall vote? Because if we do vote this particular first one down, then are we gonna go through the motions for the other two? Is that,
I think it's what Phyllis was just asking.
Unanimous.
And I know that seems kind of odd. I agree. I hadn't thought of it from that perspective. It's somewhat, I tend to, I can understand why it's not necessary. At the same time, I feel like you folks, he's made a request and maybe that a finding should be made with respect to those, just so there is a record as to the requests made with those.
I think it's gonna hinge on the DEP setback, right? And if that's denied, you know, I don't know what would, and we approve it,
But
then
If DEP didn't grant approval, that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with, I'm sorry, Steve, I'm not following you.
sorry.
If DEP approval doesn't really have anything to do with the lot size. I
Okay.
mean, the lot.
Yep, I hear you.
And whether or not the next criteria about the 50-foot stream buffer,
Sure.
it's almost irrelevant whether or not DEP grants approval. Do you feel that that's appropriate based upon the variance criteria? Never mind that there's another regulatory authority that has jurisdiction over it, because they're not looking at variance criteria. They're looking at environmental impact, whether or not it's absolutely necessary to build that close. That's the types of things.
So that really
DEP 's
shouldn't be
looking
part of our consideration at all then, the DEP aspect of it,
I agree.
just my opinion.
Okay. So, you have to help me out here, David. I'm fading a little bit.
Yep, so
We're up to F.
We're up to F.
we're waiting for you to make a motion on, or your decision on E. I think you were the last one on E.
We already had a vote on E.
Well, oh, Phyllis,
Yeah,
4 to 1.
We're-
Square footage.
we're on F.
yeah.
The property is not located in whole or in part within shoreland areas as described in Title 38, Section 435. Matthew?
As far as what we've been told, it is not within the water line.
So that's,
So that's a,
yes. Okay. Paula?
To me, that brook does go right into the water line, so during high waters, so it's a no.
Melanie?
Yes, I believe this has been met. I don't believe it's in shoreline area.
Steve?
That's a no for me.
And I believe that, Title 38, Section 435, I have not read it, but my understanding is that this is not a shoreland area. I don't know. So I'm going to say yes, that it does meet it. Now, we have a bottom line vote to approve or deny this variance request or approve it with conditions. And the vote must be consistent with the votes taken on the individual review criteria. Paula, you're keeping track of that?
We've got 1, 2, 3. 3 did not meet.
Okay, so that's 3 out of 4 of us voted that, the bottom line, that to develop a lot smaller than the 60,000 square foot requirement did not meet the standards for the granting of an appeal, a variance, appeal of variance. The next item is to grant a variance or to discuss granting a variance to construct a dwelling within 50 feet of a stream, within a 50-foot stream buffer.
Excuse me, Phyllis?
Yes.
So there was supposed to be a vote.
Oh, I'm sorry.
A final vote on that with respect to the criteria there. So I think you were just asking, what the.
What the tally was.
Exactly, and
Okay.
then, and you make an overall vote that reinforces the overall voting of each of those criteria.
Okay, so, see if I can find the motion. So I'd like to entertain a motion pursuant to Appendix A, Article 8, Section 4D, and Article 9, Section 3B, 5A through F of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Lewiston for a variance to be granted to Robert Lynch for the property located at 83 No Name Pond Road for each of the following requests. This is specifically the minimum required lot size for a single-family dwelling in the rural agricultural district of 60,000 square feet as per Article 11, Section 23, to be reduced to 16,340 square feet. So have a roll call, please.
Matt Agron?
yes.
Paula?
No.
Phyllis?
Yes.
Steve?
No.
And Melanie?
No.
So the vote is 2-3. The variance does not pass.
Sense going through the rest.
So David, the petitioner is requesting that we not go through the other.
That's fine with, that's the petitioners, that's what they would like, that's fine.
Okay.
There's no point to it.
There's no,
I don't necessarily disagree. If you folks wanted to go through with it, so there's a finding for each one, that's fine because you made the request. At the same time, I think it's right that if the lot size can't be waived, then there's no reason to get a buffer, there's no reason to change the impervious area out
It
there.
won't even be approved for join the lots together.
Well, that's different.
That's a different question. That's something, again, I mean, for the benefit of everybody here, because I don't have the answer, but an option may exist for them. If the lots were merged, could they do an accessory dwelling unit out there? I don't know. That's,
If you do an accessory unit, does the size of the lot limit you?
that's what we gotta check.
You don't know.
Because my thought is no. There's language in there that says it has to meet space and bulk standards, meaning setbacks, but I don't know that lot size applies.
MMA might be able to advise.
Yeah, they haven't put out their wisdom on this
Oh.
yet because literally the rules were passed by DCD within the last month.
Oh.
So there's a lot of municipalities trying to figure out how to interpret these rules right now. So I can give you some guidance, but I don't know how much. The rub here is the Lynches may come back because maybe they still need to be closer than 50 feet to that stream even for an accessory dwelling unit. We know that DEP very well may let them get closer. That's not uncommon. DEP gives permits to get closer to streams regularly, so that's a strong possibility there. Accessory dwelling units can't be more than 900 square feet. So if they could meet that without having to impact the impervious area, which my guess is probably wouldn't be an issue then because the lots would be merged and they would have more lot size. So they were borderline with the request anyway with one lot. So my guess is merging the lots, they may not have an impervious issue out there. So I guess I'm sharing this for the benefit of everybody. There may be another option here, but they may actually still have to come back depending if a dwelling unit's gonna be closer than 50 feet.
Okay.
So you folks should talk to me, you should talk to me.
I just want to thank you for your time and your efforts. And I also want to thank the individuals who are here tonight to participate in this process. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
So that motion was made by Steve, seconded by Paula. All those in favor?
Has anyone ever not been in favor?
Want me to go against it?
I'm just curious.
I don't think so.
What is it?
I said, has anyone ever objected to adjourning?
Actually, you don't request an objection to it.
You too. Did
Oh,
you
I'm doing all right.
start, or have I just not met you? Okay.
Oh, I'll go do it, David.
Yes.
Absolutely. There's my,
Yeah.
is that what we're hearing?
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
That's here lately, so.
That I wouldn't know. You'd have to talk to me.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I think I guess, is it 3? Oh, it's 5 years, so, yeah, I guess I have 4. You know, it gets a little stressful, honestly.
Yes, I have.